Hello, welcome to Conway Video. I wanted to do a video about the subject of job titles. Job titles are obviously quite an important and interesting subject in their own right, because a lot of people, most of us have job titles if we're in work, and those job titles also become interesting when we're looking for a new job or if we're looking to grow within our existing job or company. And there are a few things I've noticed about job titles during my career, and one thing is that when we hear a job title at first, we often have an image in our head about what that job title means. So when you hear the word engineer, you probably have something come to mind in your own mind about what engineer means to you. And it can be likewise with, say, a sales assistant, accountant, senior executive, lead, director. You can go all the way up the list to the CEO, and people will have an image in their mind about what it means to be a CEO. And what I've found interesting when I look at the job market and when I look at my own experiences and people I've met and worked with who have varying job titles is that the job title often, the actual duties of the job and the way the job is in real life isn't always the same as the image that comes to mind when you think of the job title. So, for example, one way that this works is that a job title doesn't mean the same thing in every industry. So, take the example of, say, a software developer. A software developer working for a startup is quite a different kind of job than a software developer working for, say, an investment bank, working on software that's used in the bank. And that's also then again going to be different again from the duties and the day-to-day activities of a software developer who is working in aviation. Maybe they're developing controls, like digital controls for aircraft. There's going to be different kinds of requirements and needs for those people, even though their job title might be the same. They might all have the job title of software developer or software engineer, but the duties are going to be different. For example, in the startup, maybe it's going to be important to get things live very quickly and get things deployed and get it up and running ASAP. Whereas in a bank, maybe it's going to be important to have the software be very precise and good at working with numbers and figures. And then in an aviation world, maybe it's going to be important that the software is reliable, that it's free from bugs, that it performs to the standards of making the aircraft work properly, which is probably a life and death situation, so no laughing matter. And I think it's the same with a lot of other job descriptions. A CEO, for example, that's going to be one kind of job if the person is working in a medium-sized firm, maybe that's only in one city. And that's going to be a very different job from someone who's CEO of a multinational firm that's spread across multiple locations and multiple regions. I've also found that the job titles that are associated with management or with the power to hire or fire people or to choose a team, they're not always the same as they look. On the surface or from an outside perspective, it might look like that's a very prestigious and powerful and high-powered role, and someone in that role can just completely, on their own whim, they can choose who to hire, who to fire. They can basically have free rein. But it's not always quite the way it looks. Once you actually get into a job like that, you have a lot of constraints and factors that you have to deal with. For example, you're also susceptible to being hired or fired. So you also have someone that you have to report to. You also have a boss who you have to please. And if you're right at the top of the organization, maybe you're the CEO or one of the C-suite, then you have the customers to worry about. The customers are in a way your boss, or the shareholders are your boss. You have to keep them happy. And so you can't really just hire or fire whoever you feel like. There's usually some sort of constraint around you have to get good people in who are going to do the job. You have to get them in at a good price, and you have to hire the right sort of team. You have to construct the team in a way that's going to work together. It's not necessarily true that just hiring the best people is enough. If they don't get on with each other and they can't work together as a team, then you've got problems. You're going to have problems down the track. And so while it looks from the outside like a role is one thing or one way of working, from the inside, from the perspective of someone who's got the lived experience of actually being in that role, it can be quite a different ballgame and quite a different thing. And so this is why I would say I don't think job titles are not important. I think they're very important, but I don't think we should just stop at the job title. If you're looking for a new job, or you're starting out in your career and deciding what to do, or maybe you're transitioning to a new role within your current company or your current employer, rather than just looking at the title and then making an assumption in your head about what that title makes you think or makes you feel like, it's good to go that extra mile and do a bit of research. Do a bit of research and find out, what does that job actually mean? What's behind the title? What are the day-to-day activities and the duties of that role that make that title what it is? Do you really want to be account executive? Do you really want to be senior software engineer? And not just in the abstract, but at this particular company or in this particular industry in which you're working. Do you want that? And so there, I think an experimental approach can be good as well. So maybe you can try out some of the duties of that role and see how those work. And do you like having to think about hiring or firing people? Do you like managing people? Do you like dealing with software that needs to be 100% stable and reliable? Think about the problems that you're going to be solving in that role, and then you can think about whether you really want that title. And as well as the experimental approach, or in addition to it, or instead of it, you could also talk to people who are doing that job. I found that really useful. So I will try and have a coffee or a lunch with someone who's doing the kind of job that I'm curious about. Maybe I'll also try and network with people online. I'll go onto online forums or connect to people on LinkedIn, or find some other way to open a line of communication, and I'll just ask them a few questions. People often like to talk about what they do, so you can ask them, what's it like? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? What about this job do you really enjoy? And then you can think about and imagine in your mind's eye, what would it be like to actually do this job? And if you find that you like it, then yeah, you can go for it. And I guess the final point I would make is that if you've had the same job title for a long time, that doesn't necessarily mean that your career is stagnating. You might be developing a very deep and rich expertise in that field that a lot of people aren't developing. And so other people are going to look at your job title and think, oh, this person has been at the same level for a long time. Maybe they've been account manager for a long time. But they don't really see all the internal knowledge and the deep learning that you've gotten from being in that role for such a long time. And they don't see the fact that there's actually a lot more to that job than the description says. And likewise, you might have gone very quickly up the chain and gotten very fancy job titles, but you might want to think a little bit critically and think, okay, these job titles are great, but am I really learning new skills? Am I developing as a person? Am I growing? And you might decide to actually go down to a lower level job title just so you can pick up a bit of those extra challenging skills and challenge yourself a bit more in that different job. So that's my spiel on job titles. Thanks for watching.